There are a lot of unique and complex characters in the game of Blood on the Clocktower, and the goal of this video series is to help you get a bit more comfortable with some of the things that can happen in a game and help you develop your skills as a storyteller so that you can handle anything your players throw at you. Alright, so this time we are doing another rack up. As usual, we are trying to do things with a mix of player skills because most times you're going to find that there is going to be one or two players that have played the game before or know a bit more about it, and most people are going to be new. And then later on in the video series we'll do some more advanced player stuff and look at some of the other scripts. But just for starting out, this is looking at people that are kind of running their first couple of games of storytelling. They're trouble brewing and want to get to know what's going on and what stuff they should be worried about. Right in front of me is just happens to be a rack up from me just unpacking all the tokens. So let's have a look at it and edit it so that it will actually work into a functioning game. We have got 9 players, right? We've got 5 here and 4 at the top. We have no minion yet, and we can fix that. 9 players, unfortunately, does not give us our second minion. That is at 10. It is 1 minion, 2 outsiders. We currently have just the butler in there. That's our man, the butler. We have an imp, we have a slayer, we have the empath, virgin, chef, fortune teller, monk, and raven keeper. We need to replace one of these characters with a minion. Fun quiz for you to try and answer this in your head before I actually give what I would do. I don't think there's really any correct answer for most of these kind of things, but trying to approach the best outcome is the goal. What we have here is a good mix of protectors and information characters. We've got the empath, the fortune teller, and the chef as our main info characters. We've got the Raven Keeper, which is, I would say, more interactive than information. You could just never actually get any information in the game. The Slayer, which is also proactive. The Monk, which is also proactive. And the Virgin, which is also proactive in confirming a good player. So we need to remove one of these to become a minion, and we need to remove one of these to become an outsider. Setting up like this and then being able to put the drunk in later is very helpful, because we get to look at this and go, okay, which one of these characters is going to be our greatest problem character, and then use the drunk to solve that problem. But you have to be careful, because if your group is one advanced player and many new players, that one advanced player is going to end up having games where they go, I am the drunk, I am the greatest liability to the evil team right here. The storyteller had to make me the drunk for balance. Obviously, my information doesn't make any sense, and that can suck. I've been that player before. The Sydney group around the horse, where it used to be, would very regularly have lots of new players coming, and when you have more storytellers than games being run, you normally have people coming in and playing to fill out the time until maybe there's more happening. But a lot of the time, that means that the storytellers that have played a lot of the game are playing the people that are new players, and the other storyteller goes, well, shit, I know Keith, he's really scary in this particular role. I need to make sure that he doesn't run away with the game. Meanwhile, I'm just trying to make sure that everybody has fun, but you have to be able to consider all these problems. If you're that advanced player, you're going to feel really targeted, and that's not going to be really fun, because your goal as a storyteller is to create a fun game for everyone. And you have to keep in mind that the skill disparity between the players. So, looking at what we've got here, we don't know. These are just tokens. We don't know who is advanced, who is not advanced. But we do know some things, like the empath is not seated next to any evil players. Yet, I get to put a minion in there somewhere, but not seated next to any evil players. The butler seems fine. We don't have anything confirming them. Obviously, they can't become the drunk, but there's no librarian in play. We have the Slayer, which I don't think is too crazy because it is not a high info game. If the fortune teller and the Slayer work together and find the demon pretty early, that could be a good hit. So maybe we want the Scarlet Woman to be our minion, or maybe the Poisoner, which would also stop this problem. The Virgin. If we were way too worried about the Virgin running away with the game and confirming everybody, that would be a possibility. And I would probably only do that if they're an advanced player. You can also have a spy in the game to do the same kind of thing, to muck up the Virgin's plans. I probably wouldn't make the Fortune Teller drunk in this setup because, well, where the empath is, not a lot of action is going to happen for the empath. Where the Fortune Teller is, that's going to make them their main component of information they're going to get throughout the game. We then have the Raven Keeper. Never make the Raven Keeper the drunk. If they actually manage to get killed by the demon and pick someone, for the love of God, just give them information. Because that just sucks. You're waiting the whole time to do this one thing, and if it doesn't happen, you're having a bad time. The monk being the drunk is fine. The stipulation with the drunk is that you don't do anything. You think you were doing stuff, but it doesn't happen for mechanical abilities, which means that the monk can never protect someone. Whereas if the chef is the drunk, I am supposed to give them information which is misleading or unhelpful. That doesn't necessarily mean it can't be correct information. Whereas with the monk, you don't have that play. It's just, it does nothing at all times, which can be a little findable. If the monk does select a player and that player dies at night, you can go, there's drunkenness or poisoning that has affected me. I have learned something about the game, and that is a trade. So I think the monk being the drunk is not terrible. I think the chef or empath here, I think if the evil team does not have an advanced player on it, and in this setup, and you've got an also a new empath, or maybe an advanced empath, it depends, because you could be using the drunkenness on the empath to make it look like the evil team is in a different position, which could be a good way to start out the game. So I think both the monk and the empath are good choices here. And now I have to replace one of these characters with a minion. Because we have the drunk in play, I don't think the poisoner is actually a good fit here. I think Scarlet Woman is the right choice. And I think Scarlet Woman replacing Raven Keeper is maybe the way to go. The monk and the Raven Keeper don't work together that nicely because the Raven Keeper wants to die, and if the monk is protecting the Raven Keeper, then the Raven Keeper doesn't get to die and do the thing that they want to do. So I think here maybe that's the correct choice. Instead, the now Scarlet Woman wants their demon to die, so they can become the demon. Now, let's look at this setup. What have we got going on here? We've got our two outsiders. That seems fine. We've got the drunk, we've got the butler. We don't really have anything crazy here. The main stipulation with the butler that you have to be careful about in this setup is that if the virgin becomes good, the butler has no incentive to try and trust any other player. The reason why the butler does what it does is that in order to use your vote, you need to find someone that you trust so that you're voting with them to then hopefully have something happen. And the downside is that if you trust an evil player, then the evil team is gaining a vote. In this case, if the virgin is confirmed good, the butler never need do anything other than vote with the virgin. And then there's not really any gameplay to be had there. The butler isn't making any choices. The butler isn't making any reads on the other players. They're just acting as exactly the apostle of the virgin. And they become like a secondary character where they just, I am an extension of you, the virgin. So I think in this case, I would replace the butler. I'm not saying that the butler and the virgin should never go together. I think here replacing the butler with a different outsider would make for a better backup. So we're going to take him out and we're going to swap him with the saint. So similar voting control type character, but you're trying to profess your innocence. You're trying to communicate with the town. Don't execute me. I'm the good guy. I am the saint. I am one of the two outsiders. The Slayer in a game with the Imp and the Scarlet Woman is pretty good. If the Slayer does actually hit the Imp, then the Imp dies, obviously. But the Imp is passed on to the Scarlet Woman. But additionally, the Slayer is confirmed to be the Slayer. So you could potentially have both a confirmed good virgin and a confirmed good Slayer, which could be a problem. And it could be an extra problem considering both of these players are next to the empath. The empath vouches for the virgin, the empath vouches for the Slayer. Both of these plays become confirmed good. The empath is like, well, I have to be good. But the virgin gets executed for the virgin ability. The empath now reads the fortune teller and it moves on. You build a circle of trust pretty strong here. So I think that might be a problem. That might be a good enough argument to move the drunkenness to the empath or to the virgin, depending on who these players are and if you think they are very scary or not. We have the chef. The chef is going to receive a 1 or a 0. Because there is no drunkenness or poisoning that could be affecting the chef, you will know there are no pairs of evil players because there's going to be no misinformation for them, which is going to mean they are going to get a 0, certainly. Is that going to be a problem with this setup? Well, if the chef believes that they are good, you have sitting across the room from the chef, the empath, which believes the slayer and the virgin are good, the virgin who could be potentially confirmed good. And then between those two players, you have 3 on the left and 2 on the right. Each pile can only contain 1 evil player. So on the left, you have the imp and the saint, right? If they were both, and let's assume that everyone trusts the empath confirms the other 2 players is good. You have the saint and the imp, only one of them can be an evil player. And then on the other side, you have the fortune teller, the monk, and the scarlet woman. Only one of them can be an evil player. So you have to be really careful about how the chef will always split the room. The chef and the empath together in a very small game, often 7, can eliminate so many players from contention that only the evil team remains. So if you have 7 players, for this hypothetical, 7 players, you have the empath confirms 2 people, and then the chef says the evil team is sitting next to each other. It can only be these 2 people and no other combination of players, which is a bit rough. So it's always worth checking out where the empath is sitting, where the chef is sitting, what kind of information that is going to give. Here, it's not too detrimental, but it's worth considering. We have the monk, who's probably always going to be targeting into the empath people, probably never targeting the saint. Doesn't need to be targeting the chef. Maybe hits the fortune teller. Let's look at the fortune teller next. Okay, who's going to be the red herring? We've got a drunk empath. That is already a lot for the empath to deal with. They don't need to also be a red herring. The virgin, there's no point in the virgin being the red herring. It's just a confirmation that is the red herring, which can be really damning. The saint being the red herring, depending on the group. If the saint is the red herring, that can just lose the game instantly. Or if the players have played enough games, they go, oh, hang on, actually. Ooh. But because the imp and the saint are sitting next to each other, if the player is playing where they're just hitting each person once, and they hit both the imp and the saint at the same time, they're going to get a yes anyway. And no other yeses, right? Which means they wouldn't find the red herring if that was the case. This isn't a super common strategy, a super common thing to be worried about, but where you put the red herring, both on the player but also the location of the circle, can matter. If the red herring is next to the demon and the fortune teller hits next to the demon and hits the demon and someone else, they're going to get 2 yeses in a cone, and they could potentially pick both of those people and get a yes, or however they want to split up the different things to try and flip coins as to where these things are going to be. Whereas if you have it somewhere else on the other side of the room, they're going to go, okay, here's my cone. Whoop, we got a yes here. I keep going around. Oh, we got a yes back here over on this person. These are the people I think we should be executing. It's more precise if they're further away, but one of them is going to be a false yes, and one of them is going to be a yes, yes. So that is also something to consider. I know that maybe not come out as clear as possible, but the fortune teller is probably the most powerful information character. And the thing that balances that is the red herring. So where you put the red herring is supposed to deter trust in the circle and try and balance it for the evil team so that the fortune teller doesn't just run away with the game. The evil team has the advantage of the Scarlet Woman here, where the Scarlet Woman can be hit and won't register as the demon, and then later become the demon and be pseudo-verified. But you can't make the Scarlet Woman the red herring, obviously, because it must be a good player. Sometimes you'll see an advanced player being their own red herring. Actually, you could also see it for a beginning player if they're just never going to think of scanning themselves. Because sometimes advanced players will like, okay, I'll pick out some people, I'll mathematically look that there's actually not that many chances left to hit. I will then swap to doing myself and somebody else. And if they are picking themselves and somebody else, then obviously they're going to get a yes every time because they are their own red herring. In this setup, it's not super obvious as to who the red herring should be. I think you have some good options in the Slayer, because if the Slayer doesn't hit the demon, they can't become good. And they could be looking like they're actually vouching for someone that is their demon. I think there's no reason to show it on the chef. I think maybe on the monk could work. And that's probably the main stuff that I would look at this and consider. There's not too much play in what you could be doing here. We have maybe the empath information being drunk. What do we show them? It could be 0, it could be 1, it could be 2, right? Probably in this scenario, I'll be showing a 1. If the virgin gets confirmed good, that 1 is going to mean it must be the other person. The Slayer has the opportunity to always fire off before being executed. So there's another thing to maybe pay some attention to. This has been another storyteller utility video from Cutlass of Board Games. If you did like this, please let us know in the comments, or post some rack-ups for us to have a look at, or any questions that you have so we can go over it and make sure that you're going to be the best storyteller you can be.